Welcome to Infinity Whole Health Care, featuring the Revealing Wholeness podcast with your podcast host, Dr. Troy Munson.
Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. Troy Munson. And B vitamins are something that many people take. They don't understand quite why sometimes, but they'll tell things like, hey, it gives me energy, or it, helps me sleep, or I don't have to have as much coffee, or it helps my heart, or I lose weight. All these things are possibilities, but beyond that, we're going to talk about things like if you have a rapid heart rate or too slow of a heart rate, if you have hypertension or hypotension, meaning your blood pressure too high, too low, if your heart skips a beat, or you have even some chest pains. We will probably talk about that as terms of B vitamins as a possibility, even though there are other conditions that we'll eventually discuss. But in this particular podcast, we're going to go at length at B vitamins. And there are two types of B vitamins. Now, when they discovered the full B complex, they knew that there was probably a dividing point in these two groups. And when they finally started discovering this other vitamin group that was very similar or always found together with all these B complex that they found, they started to call it B2. And at the same time, in another part of the world, they were discovering the same group of B vitamins. And the first one they found, they didn't want to call it B2, they wanted to call it vitamin G, because the B had already been taken, and they had a whole group of things listed into the Bs. And basically B2 won out. And so now, for those of you that are not sure what B2 even is, it is riboflavin. And so there are actually many riboflavonoids now that we do know, but we tend to group them as a B2. So instead of muddying the waters, I'm going to explain how they associate or differentiate, rather, the two vitamin B groups. Basically, if you take a synthetic B vitamin, which probably many of you have, you probably notice that in the toilet when you pee, they're beautiful colors, whether orange or bright yellow or even green. These are the synthetics that are washing through the body because they're water soluble. Now, the other group, this lesser group or the secondary group that they found, this riboflavin and the other ones, they found that they were not only water soluble, but ultimately when they tried to see if they were soluble in alcohol, they were not. And so now they had this dividing point. The original B complex was not only water soluble, but alcohol soluble, but the other one was only water soluble. So now they had a way of differentiating them. So now, is that important? Well, yes, to a point, because if we take this first group of B vitamins, in fact, for those of you that have been listening, at the very end, I'm going to have a fairly extensive list of things that are helpful, or rather could be deficiencies seen with the first group of Bs, and then what symptoms and deficiencies could be seen with the second group. And so you'll be shocked at things like paraventricular heart, whatever, the things that are murmurs that people call. So these murmurs or heart palpitations or skipped beats or even arrhythmias, they'll kind of all lump these PVCs or premature ventricular contractions, they call them. So these PVCs, these would be things where the heart is not necessarily being controlled very well. And so this lesser group or the second group of B vitamins would be incorporated in that. Let's say that you have hypotension and you don't tend to take breaths as often as you should, and you can't hold your breath. We have trouble just simply the heart beating. It doesn't want to beat real well. So maybe at a resting pulse, you're at like 55, 56. I've seen them as low as 48. And I've seen blood pressure like 94/50. And respirations, instead of 17 a minute, they're at like 10. And if you're seeing things like that where you typically take shallow breaths, can't hold your breath, your pulse is really slow resting, your blood pressure isn't real high, you might even stand up and feel lightheaded, that's going to be the first major B vitamin complex that most people associate with B complex. Now, while I am a big proponent of fixing hearts and fixing blood pressure and correcting deficiencies that then watch all these other conditions go away, I don't particularly care for synthetic vitamins. And so if you're like, oh my gosh, I got to go run out and get myself some B complex, please don't do that. Oftentimes the synthetics are not good and they don't do what you think they're going to do, only because they've been manufactured in a lab and now they don't look like the original nature orientation, so to speak. So instead of, it's like watching a movie where you watch it through a mirror. Is it okay? Yeah, the movie seems okay, but some of the things look a little off. And so mirror imaged B vitamins, which are synthetic, are not used real well in the human body. And so thus they don't stay and they don't perform like they should. So when you're looking for B vitamins, we definitely recommend a natural source. And when I do supplements for folks, it's definitely a natural source. So the first group of Bs that are the major Bs that we think of would promote nerve transmission. So they're going to increase tone. And that tone we would see like with an irregular heart rate or an atrial fibrillation or a heart block going on, we would want to do the major Bs or the original group of Bs. And so we would differentiate that right there and say, hey, we want those. Within that major group of Bs is an incredible vitamin that is very much overlooked, and it's called B4. Most people have never heard of B4, and it basically goes by the name of adenine. And adenine is significant because it's where we make our nucleic acids, RNA, DNA, things like that. And so that adenine is then combined with a type of sugar called ribose. That's like the ribonucleic acid and things of that nature, or deoxyribose. These are where DNA and RNA come from. When you combine adenine with that ribose sugar, triphosphate, adenosine, which then is now part of the matrix of that DNA. And so that's where it all comes from. So that B4 is incredibly important in actually making cellular DNA, not only transmitting nerve impulses. And most medical doctors way back said, hey, B1 or thiamine is way better. And they're not actually correct. B4 is a better nerve conduction promoter than thiamine. And of course, if we were to actually get the natural thiamine, we'd probably find that they're even maybe a little bit comparable. But when they started synthesizing these things, because they knew they could do it very easy in a lab, their results were just not as good. So let's say I'm a labist and I find this adenine and I'm like, well, shoot, I can synthesize that. We can just test it. And when I synthesize adenine and it doesn't perform anything like the original structure, what are my beliefs about adenine? Well, it just doesn't work. I'm not going to try and promote the idea of, hey, you've only got to have natural adenine. You can't have it synthesized from a lab. And so if I'm going to promote or try to make money and I don't see a synthetic adenine performing, what am I going to do? I'm going to throw it out. I'm going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Now, here's the cool thing. That adenosine, once it's produced, and we hook 3 phosphate molecules to it, it becomes the most important thing practically in the human body. Now, obviously, there are millions of important structures in the human body and chemicals, but one of the most major for energy production is ATP, adenosine triphosphate. And so the adenosine triphosphate is a big deal when it comes to this whole B complex of even making energy in the human body. The Krebs cycle, breaking down sugar, generating energy, being able to do everything that our body desires to do. Every protein that's made, every hormone that's made, everything that happens in the body, ATP almost has a hand in it. So could it be considered one of the most important things? Well, yes, but if, without everything else, it's irrelevant. So it's hard to put one thing over another, but it is an important molecule in the human body. So now this other type of B vitamins, this lesser group, the second group, this non-alcohol soluble group, These are the B vitamins that we would consider as a very relaxing form of B vitamins. So if I had high blood pressure, if I had a fast heart rate, if I had these skip beats like we talked about in the beginning, I would want to go after those B vitamins, or the secondary category B vitamins that are very relaxing, that are decreasing tone in the nervous system, so that all of a sudden my 84, 85, 90 beats a minute at rest heart rate is now going back into that 70, 72 beats a minute, which is ideal. If my blood pressure is ebbing up into that 140, 150, 160, or even higher, catastrophically high, over 80, 90, 100, 150, you're now saying, man, I need to get some relaxation and some decreased tone going on there. Hey, if I'm really stressed out, I'm going to need these lesser, or this other group, this secondary group of B vitamins, to calm down, to just level out my body. So those are some of the things that are helpful. Now, for those of you that are trying to lose weight, I may have just perked up some of the ladies in the room and some men, but losing weight or metabolizing fat is vital for these lesser or secondary group of B vitamins, these relaxing B vitamins. They are key to fat metabolism. Most notably is like a niacinamide, a natural form of niacin. You had people, I remember 20 years ago, people take niacin and they'd have this niacin flush because they were trying to do it for weight loss. And of course, it's a synthetic form of niacinamide, and thus the niacin would flush the body, or it produce a tremendous amount of heat. And people would have to lay in a cold bath because they'd just be on fire for like 2 hours with high dose of niacin. So they tried to graduate or titrate up to heavy doses of niacin. But when you do niacinamide, that doesn't happen because it's a natural form and it works better. Now, most of those lesser B vitamins, that secondary group, all have a hand in burning fat, as well as really metabolizing fat, so it can be used in the human body. It's important. So let's explore a couple other things with the first group of B vitamins. Let's say that you had a low body temperature. Oh, I must have a thyroid problem. Well, you could have a B vitamin deficiency of the first group. Let's say that you had some mental things happening, like you didn't like loud noises. You had some intolerances there. Let's say that you had some digestive issues or loss of appetite. You'd want to be going after that first group of B vitamins. And so watch for those things. So if we have this keyed up system, sometimes we don't do so well with a lack of B vitamins. And that's where that mental side of the B vitamins always comes in. When people start taking in the beginning synthetics, they'll feel good right away, but then all of a sudden those synthetics start building up in their blood and they actually don't feel good. And so we can see them go both ways. So be very, very cautious about where you're getting your B vitamins and how they're being derived. I can't tell you how many times I'll see fractionated supplements say whole food supplement because they've used blue-green algae to spray synthetic vitamins on the blue-green algae. And after 10 minutes, they're now allowed to call it a whole food vitamin. And so they can market it as a whole food vitamin. I know it's very sneaky and it's irritating, but it's out there. And so be cautious of that too. Now, here's an interesting thing. Let's say that you had trouble because you woke up every night in the middle of the night and you can't get back to sleep. Now, sometimes if it's not because your mind is racing, that you're just up and you're like, I don't know what's going on. Let's say that you wake up in the morning and you're also a bit more stiff and sore. Then that is going to be that first group of B vitamins that we would consider energy producing and toning, but because they're also involved in digestion, it's important to break down the pyruvic acid and the lactic acid that we produce in our body with those B vitamins. And if we're lacking them, they'll build up in our tissue. They'll also build up and get to the bladder, which irritates the walls of the bladder and thus wakes us up to go to the bathroom. And so we'll find this stuff happening because we don't have enough of those B vitamins to help with digestion. And it's merely that. Now, would we want to take a massive dose of stimulatory natural B vitamins at bedtime? No, but if we are waking up in the middle of the night, we might start doing those B vitamins at dinner and find that, you know what? After 2 or 3 or 4 days, I'm not waking up in the middle of the night as much as I used to, not being able to get back to sleep. Now, I still might be going to the bathroom, but I'm able to go right back to sleep. We would find that major beginning group of water-soluble, alcohol-soluble vitamins, B vitamins, be very helpful for that particular thing. Now, the other thing that those B vitamins do, that major group, they help the pancreas produce enzymes. So some of you that might be insulin resistant, we might be seeing a catastrophic need for this category of B vitamins, this major group of toning B vitamins. And therefore, if we can tone nervous system with it, we probably could tone cellular membranes with it too, and therefore we would see a reduction in insulin resistance as well. Now, these are some ideas. They're gaining ground and they're getting some traction as people start experimenting with this stuff, realizing that these things could be very beneficial to me. So I'm going to read you a pretty intense list of things that are this first group. So we're about finished with this podcast. So if you're waiting for this, here's the list. So things that are this B vitamin are heat soluble. Some vitamins, companies, they'll heat their stuff to dry it. At least the B vitamins that are stable in heat, that produce energy, will actually survive the heating process. So like cooking foods and things. Now, opposed to that is the secondary group of B vitamins that are only water soluble. They are sensitive to heat. So if you have liver and you have a full complement of both B vitamins in there, both groups, then you're going to want to be gentle with your heating or cooking of liver. You want to do it a little bit lower heat. If you're going to use things like nutritional yeast, great, throw it on salads, throw it on popcorn. It's fantastic on eggs. If you're going to cook with it, make sure it's at the end of the meal so that you can really stabilize those lesser B vitamins that are relaxing so that you can save them. And even molasses, we want to make sure that if we're getting molasses and they're processing it from sugarcane, which is where it comes from, we want to make sure that we're being okay. If you're thinking, hey, I'm going to put that molasses in molasses cookies and get all my B vitamins, well, yes, you're going to get one group, but not the relaxing group. Something to consider. So of the Bs, major stuff like the thiamine, which is that B1, B4, which is the anti-paralysis factor, they call it, or that adenine. And then, of course, B12, as well as pantothenic acid, or B5. And then as we look at the Gs, or the lesser, that secondary group, we get the riboflavin and the niacin, or the niacinamide. We get even things like folic acid, PABA, lipotrophic factors, meaning fat fat metabolizing factors like choline, inositol, and betaine are all types of B vitamins that are this lesser group. They also help with digestion tremendously so. So we want to be careful, again, heating that particular side of the B complex. Then we get the Bs that are nerve promoting, the secondary group that are nerve relaxing. The first group that acts like vasoconstrictors to bump up blood pressure as well as tone of your blood vessels and heart rate and blood pressure. And then the secondary group, which acts like a vasodilator. So it opens up blood vessels, decreasing tone so that we have a lesser blood pressure. We have a lower heart rate. We have more relaxation going on in that heart muscle. We go back to the first group and we see things like slow heart rate, irregular heart rate, heart block. We'll see a skipped beat, like a separation that you'll see sometimes on an EKG of the sounds. And then in the second group, we'll see things like a fast heart rate, like tachycardia. We'll see the PVCs, that preventricular, the ectopic beats, they call them. We'll see even angina, so heart pain, being a decrease of these lesser B vitamins, or the secondary group. We'll see even heart attacks because there's so much tone in this blood vessel that's supplying the heart that it literally spasms shut and now causes a lack of oxygen on the heart itself. And that is the definition of a myocardial infarction, or an ischemic event of the heart, or a heart attack. So the secondary group of B vitamins can even help dilate those blood vessels. So all of a sudden we get now more oxygen to the heart. So those of you athletes out there, you don't just want to focus on one side of these B vitamins. You really want both. You want to be able to increase heart rate, increase oxygenation, but at the same time you want tone of the heart to beat that beat solidly every time to supply oxygen to the rest of the body too. Now, we've already talked about the mental side. Even psychotic tendencies are seen when we don't have enough of that first B vitamin group. And we see apprehension or nervousness or intolerance to noises. Now, on the other side, the secondary group, we see excessive worry. And we see, again, anxiety can be from this group too. We see moodiness, depression, and even suspicious tendencies out of that secondary relaxing group. Then we look at digestive things, the salivary glands, the pancreas, those enzymes that make our body more alkaline, which so many people are looking at alkaline water when they might just be lacking the major Bs. We also will see that an acidic person who has, it's almost like they're holding on to their breath, so we'll see it as increased carbon dioxide in their blood. We'll see the need for B vitamins in that particular group. Even lack of appetite or drowsiness after meals is that first group of B vitamins. Now, the other side, the digestive components of the relaxing B vitamins, that secondary group, we'll see an over-acid, not necessarily an over-acid, but an aiding in acidicness of the stomach. So if you're getting acid reflux, please go check out my podcast. I have talked at length at how when we have acid reflux, it's actually because we're fermenting the food in our stomach, we're not digesting it, and therefore we're burping up these acids at about a 4.5, which are acidic, but they're not like they should be. We're never reaching the 1.5 acidity that our stomach was designed to reach. And therefore we're fermenting foods, and now we have acid reflux or heartburn. But when these lesser B vitamins that are relaxing, they also promote production of stomach acid so that we can complete digestion. And that helps the person that maybe even have a spastic gallbladder, by the way. So if you have gallbladder things going on, even pain in gallbladder, you may be one of these deficient lesser B vitamin candidates. Now, as we've talked about, fat metabolism with this lesser group. But the other side, these major Bs that we've been talking about for so many years that everybody associates with this, with a basic B complex, those are going to help actually carbohydrate metabolism. So if you have some sugar in your diet, they're going to be there. And we would expect to find them in things like molasses that come from sugarcane where sugar is found. And of course they are. So if you're finding that you have maybe some sugar issues, people say, well, I can't do molasses because it's going to spike my blood sugar. Well, if it's real, natural, non-damaged molasses, it's blackstrap molasses that's totally natural, you may find that it actually improves your sugar numbers. But it will take some time as well. So a little nugget for you. Now, neurologic situations, a lack of vibratory sense. I'm having numbness in my fingers. That is a major B component. But I've also seen that when I have folks with carpal tunnel type symptoms, I'll find sometimes those lesser B vitamins are more helpful because that is a nerve issue. And so I'll watch things improve beautifully, sometimes neurologically, if it's based on that, rather than a vibratory thing. So there can be damage on both sides. If it is a lactic acid kind of buzzing of the fingers where it feels not so much numb, but almost like a pinprick or tingle, now I'm going to go after those original B vitamins, that first group that is stimulatory in nature, that is burning things up, that is helping the Krebs cycle, that is trying to get sugar off those nerves, that's trying to calm that nervous system down. Then we get the sleep correlations that we've already talked about. Waking up at night frequently, unable to return to sleep, perhaps even back pain, especially at night, is that first group of B vitamins, the majors, the ones that are tonal in nature. If we have difficulty falling asleep, if our limbs jerk upon falling asleep, if we can hear our heartbeat in our pillow, that would be the lesser secondary group of B vitamins, the ones that are relaxing. If you have itchy skin or dermatitis, then we have a major B issue. If we have cracking in the corners of the mouth, or on the face, or on the neck when shaving, or a bright red tip of your tongue, or even sometimes what they call a purple tongue or strawberry tongue, or your upper lip is thin, like it used to be full and now it's thinning out. Then we have a lesser B vitamin or a secondary group, that relaxing B vitamins that are being called upon. We talked about breath hold. If you can't hold your breath, then you want the first major group. If you have shortness of breath, you want the first major group. If you have decreased respiratory rate, you want that first group of major B vitamins. If you find yourself yawning or fatigued often, first group of B vitamins. If you find decreased body temperature, you definitely want that first group of B vitamins. The secondary group we would use for things like high stress level, rapid heart rate, can't calm down. Those would be things that we'd be looking at for the relaxing B vitamins, or that secondary group. Next, you'll have women that have breast tenderness or swelling. They'll have premenstrual tension. They'll have heavy, long periods. They'll have short intervals between their cycles. Instead of a 28-day cycle, they'll have a 20-day cycle, or even shorter sometimes. If they have even hypothyroid type symptoms, they'll want the first group of B vitamins, the majors, the ones that give energy. And of course they would want that. Like, please give me something to help. If you have the opposite, if you have kind of, your cycles are not very toned, they're very scant, they're not doing very well, you don't feel like very even safe. There's weird things that go along with this type of a presentation, because there's women out there that their breasts can even be misshapen. They don't feel like themselves. They don't even feel like women. And we'll find this from this lesser B vitamin type of situation. We'll find that it also helps their adrenals. So all of a sudden, this afternoon fatigue can be helped. We'll also find that they may have visual disturbances, even like being afraid of light, what we would call photophobia. They'd even have itching or burning eyes. They may even only see, in extreme cases, part of written words and they're looking straight at them. They may have optical issues within the eye because it isn't able to actually get any blood flow to it, so the eyes are going bad. And so sometimes it'll even look like they're looking through a fishbowl. And this could be men included in this type of a category. So a lot of symptoms here just based on the types, or the two types of B vitamins that we could encounter in nature that are so helpful. And look at all of the symptoms that are associated with them. It's a lot. So again, this is a podcast you may want to digest a couple of times. You could even write out the lists and do that. If you have questions or concerns, or how do I get these Bs? What do I do? And so I'm happy to discuss those things with you. Shoot me a line anytime. Email me, text me, whatever you got to do. Let's get you well. Let's get you healthy. Let's get your heart protected. Let's get you sleeping well. Let's get your energy back on track. Let's get your blood pressure functioning correctly. Let's see your body heal on multiple levels so you can enjoy life to a much fuller extent. Until next time, I'm Dr. Troy Munson.
This information is for educational purposes only, and does not constitute medical advice, nor establish any kind of patient-client relationship, is not a substitute for any type of professional advice. Always consult a professional in your area for your particular medical needs.